Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Under the Heat Lamp podcast. I almost said the same thing I said last week. So I'd like to introduce my co-hosts, Don.
Hello there.
David.
Hello.
And George.
Yo.
Today, we're going to be talking about targeted individuals. I'm gonna introduce this one because this is a subject very close to my heart. That I've been a part of for a long time. Well, I say a part of. I'm not a targeted individual, but I have been a member of many Facebook groups. I tried to listen to a targeted individual podcast, and I've watched everything there is on the internet about them.
Hold on.
And I even
Before you
saw
carry
in
on,
real life.
was that hosted by targeted individuals?
Was what hosted by targeted
The
individuals?
podcast.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
It was hard to listen to, and it was about 6 hours long.
Wait, one episode was 6 hours.
Yes, one episode. It was like a call-in podcast. I'll try and find it afterwards. But
Link in the description below.
It was maybe not, but it was a painful podcast. I also saw on Whitehall in London a targeted individual protest happening. It was just one guy protesting against targeted individuals. Oh no, he's probably pro targeted individual, anti gang stalker. So anyway, let me just briefly explain what a targeted individual is. Target individual is someone who believes that they're at the center of a shady government conspiracy where a massive amount of people are in the streets stalking them and kind of making their lives a misery. And this can be through like physically just being there and stalking them, or through like radio sound waves and stuff going into their brain. They have implants in them, things like that. So it's a disturbing and paranoid conspiracy theory that's very personal. Does anyone else have a different take on what it is?
No.
I sort of read a lot of the stuff where it was a lot of electronic surveillance, but not in terms of like CCTV. It's like you said, radio waves, radioactive, like targeting people who believe they'd had little like microchips implanted under their skin and things like that. And I saw a lot of things leading back to the MK Ultra program. I don't know if you guys heard of that, but it was during the sort of between the 50s and 70s. The CIA were experimenting on basically mind control with psychedelic drugs like LSD, and there was a number of experiments they did on that. So there is some basis in, I'd say, reality, but not really at all.
Yep. Daniel, George, do you have any?
Yeah,
Donald, George?
I think like you pretty much hit it nail on the head with your explanation. In terms of the community, it is just full of paranoia and speculation, and they all just kind of bolster each other's stories and give everybody like another avenue of like just going through these delusions, pretty much.
Yeah, it seems to stem from something which is very individual, like you say, but where the community aspect comes in is seemingly all these people coming together with their own respective stories, and then it all evolving into wider conspiracy theories in general. There was a lot of like recurring stories between everybody, and there's a whole load of terminology that's being made off of these events that happened to each of them. So yeah, that's where the community aspect kind of comes into it.
Yep. So I'd say this is one of the most interesting like communities we've talked about. I mean, we're going to talk about, this is the second one, but that we published. But because the community aspect is so central to it, because if you think about it, like there's always been people who are paranoid and believe that there's some conspiracy targeting them. But now they're kind of vindicated because they're like, holy shit, there's all these other people who think the same thing. And this would have never been possible if the internet didn't exist. And because we talk about online communities on this podcast, the fact it's online is so central. Like maybe you might get two people in a town who believe in this sort of stuff, but the fact they're all connected constantly on Facebook and all these different places means that the conspiracy theory can really like evolve and develop, and people's own paranoia can develop. So you might hear about like, oh, on the Facebook page, like, oh, the gang stalkers, and the gang stalkers are the stalkers who follow you, are using this new technique or this hand symbol. So then you go out and you see that, and you're like, holy shit, one of the gang stalkers is doing this thing. So it kind of just like the community fuels people's individual paranoia and, frankly, like mental illness.
Yeah, you make a good point there. Like, I want to jump in just because you said that. Like, how much do you think this is people who are a little odd, and how many of these people in this community do we think need actual, psychiatric help and maybe medical help as well?
A fair amount.
Yeah.
All?
Yeah, I don't think there's many people that like get convinced by other targeted individuals and kind of fall through the cracks. I feel like to be on this level, you have to have, some like extreme level of paranoia.
I can imagine there are cases where maybe some people are spoken into it, but only somewhat gullible people in a way. Because almost like Kaelin was saying originally, where say this person mentions to you that like, oh, watch out for the dog walkers, they're perps, they're watching us.
Yeah.
And then you go outside and then a dog walker looks at you a bit funny and you're like, oh shit, hold on a second. There might be onto something there.
Yeah. I think you can definitely develop a mental illness through this kind of thinking. So I honestly think like maybe not an average person, but maybe a person who's anxious or slightly vulnerable in that way could start to develop a real like neuroses around this. If you're out there thinking every day, like, or if you're constantly reminded of the things that could be a gang stalker, you can just develop like a massive sort of like mindset around it. And so I think that although maybe not everyone who goes into the community has a mental illness, I think like everyone who truly believes this has some kind of something slightly wrong with
it. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And even you're talking about progressing the conspiracy. That's such a big deal. The fact that there is new information, new things that like get you back into thinking about this and back into that mindset. I imagine if you have this kind of idea that, you've got some tracking device planted in your skeleton and you go on your day for months and months and don't have any like, reminders of that, you can kind of like slowly stop thinking about it. But this is constant. Every day they're getting updates on Facebook with another person's story or like another technique that the gang stalkers are using, and it's just constantly keeping them in this like extremely paranoid mindset.
Yeah, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like they're looking for almost specific things, and then someone random posts something which perfectly lines up with it, and then it's like, oh, there it is. Like, it's definitely happening.
There's so much interesting to say about this topic, but I think we should start, or kind of we've already started, but I think we should maybe talk about what some of these videos look like that you'll see posted that are kind of evidence of gang stalking. Has anyone watched any of those?
Yeah, I saw a couple.
So why don't you talk us through how they usually go?
It's usually a rather paranoid looking person, basically looking straight at their camera phone, and they're out in public somewhere, and they're using this as evidence to point out gang stalking. So then they'll kind of maybe shift the camera over to someone who's walking. This is at least the ones that I saw. Again, with dog walkers. Yeah. There'll be someone coming close to them in the distance, most likely just minding their own business, having a nice walk. But in the TI's eyes, this is a planted person who's there to keep monitor on the individual. And, they'll like walk by and they'll keep close eye on them. It's like, see, I told you, like, they're there. They're coming for me. And it's a lot of things like that. Where it's just like, I've just been walking around and I've seen this. And then, they make a video about it as like a form of proof that things are happening.
Have you seen any videos where the TI confronts the perp?
Yeah, just one where like the dog walkers walked past and he was just like, I know what you're doing. And obviously they had no idea what they were talking about.
There's a lot of those videos and they are pretty funny. There's one who believes like mail trucks are stalking her, so she's constantly just walking up to like mailmen and being like, "What are you doing? Like, I know what you're doing, and they're just completely like, what the fuck are you talking about, lady?
Yeah.
So yeah, George, David, have you seen any of these?
I haven't seen any of the videos because I wanted to see what your sort of takes on it were, but it's really weird because it strikes me. It reminds me of people who confront like crisis actors, and I think the two are very similar.
Very
Like,
similar.
and you have someone shouting at this like poor innocent bystander, or someone who's like fucking lost a child in like Sandy Hook, just having someone who needs, it to delicately call like someone crazy, just shouting abuse essentially at them. It's really weird, and it's kind of, I don't know. I find it hard to look at because on the one hand, you think this person shouting is an absolute fucking knobber, but on the other hand, you think maybe there could be something seriously wrong here, and it's kind of where it falls on a case by case basis is strange because some people can just have like fairly innocent delusions, and it's entertaining, and some people should probably be in a fucking mental hospital.
Yeah, so what is the difference between a innocent delusion and one of these, do you think?
I guess it's similar to a lot of the other conspiracy theories where, say, like I mentioned, like the MK Ultra thing before, and someone who thinks, like from what I read, the MK Ultra thing sounded like the CIA gave LSD to loads of people. Well, not loads of people, but like, I think it was like 150 like cases of human experimentation where they were basically given LSD and had a little party, and things like the Grateful Dead were playing to people, and like there's a lot of weird like reports in quotation marks around it, but it just sounds like they gave a lot of people LSD to see what sort of effect it would have on their brains and how suggestible they would be. Whereas, and someone could think like, oh, the government has proven to be trying to like, mind control us because of this sort of thing. Maybe they are doing experiments like that again. Like, and it's kind of like, fair enough. Like, you're not too delusional in that regard. But then when you think the mailman is keeping an eye on you when you are just an average guy, it's a little strange.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there is like a fine line that's crossed where it is like kind of concerning. Where it is this case of, I believe there's higher powers which are kind of meddling in things. Like, okay, fine, I guess you can agree with that to some extent. But when it gets to them, using microchips, and even in present times, something like what's going on at the moment with the coronavirus epidemic, that's a weapon or a tool that they're using to gain surveillance and do all manner of things. That's where it gets a bit concerning.
I guess we should explain the current conspiracy regarding the coronavirus and the 5G. Does anyone want to have a go at that?
I've only
Well,
seen
when you go
odd
ahead,
bits.
George.
I don't feel like I'm able to explain it that well.
Okay, well, I'll have a bash at it then.
Yeah,
like,
you did, David.
So basically, currently as the coronavirus is happening, the 5G rollout's happening as well in different parts of the world. And on the many conspiracy sites, a lot of people believe that the coronavirus is actually an Illuminati-esque cover-up for the fact that 5G is killing people because of the sort of, I say radio waves, but it's not quite that. But you know what I mean, the radiation or the radio waves that the 5G is creating. I only mention it because it's very similar to the idea of a targeted individual thinking that the government are broadcasting beams into their mind that's causing them to. What do they? I want to ask you that, Kenan. What do they think the beams are doing? Just keeping a check on them, controlling their actions, or like what is?
So they call it electronic harassment, and for a lot of people, it can just be causing them physical pain. So that's an interesting thing, right? So there's some people who think it does like mind control, so they'll be out of control of their actions and they'll do things that are the fault of the harassers. Other people think they're just doing something called voice to skull,
Right.
which is they call it V2K. I don't know what V2S, but it's V2K, and so they'll just be whispering things, and in the Vice documentary that I linked you guys, the guy's saying, you know, there's just some fucking nerd in like a control center somewhere just laughing while saying shit into my head. So they really believe that there's like this big government conspiracy, and there's just some kind of like fucking call center of like voice decay operators just like saying shit into their skulls.
Yeah, man, that's real. I did that job for a while. One summer.
Did you?
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I mean, to be fair, it'd be pretty fun.
It was pretty good. It's pretty good
but-
pay, you know. Obviously, I got
Yeah,
paid in
if the fucking TIs
this-
ever find this, they're gonna think we're fucking.
That's
Yeah.
true. Yeah, they're gonna think
Yeah.
that this is you know.
And they're going
There's
to be
a special kind
wondering
of
how our
currency.
voices are getting beamed into their head, I think.
Yeah. Yeah,
Is,
well, so so a lot of the stuff is about harassment, and a lot of the people in the street are just out there. Like, I mean, what information can you really gather by walking by someone? So it's all about just harassment and stalking, as part of like some kind of giant experiment. And that's what I think is really interesting in terms of a difference between this and general conspiracy theories is how personal it is. Most people believe, you know, 9/11. I say most people. Most conspiracy theory people believe 9/11 was an inside job, or you know, the moon landing didn't happen, which is this grand conspiracy that really has nothing to do with them.
Mm.
But this one is like, I am personally being targeted by a giant conspiracy, which is just so fucking weird. It's like, I don't know. I guess it's a little bit self-aggrandizing.
Oh,
in
for
a way,
sure.
Because,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
because you're just like a dude who has like a normal job. Like, what the hell would the government get out of putting all these resources into just following you around and annoying you?
It's kind of like what we talked about. We did a draft pilot-esque episode where we spoke about the flat Earth conspiracy, and one thing that we brought up in that kind of briefly was the idea that this person has this information that's so important, and you know, other people are kind of too fickle to realize it, and they're the enlightened ones because they have this information. It's almost like the TI thing follows a kind of very similar track, where it's like, in their eyes, like they are important enough to be watched, and kind of tracked by the government, or by
that's
a
interesting.
higher power or whoever.
I want to jump in and sort of play devil's advocate a little bit here
Sure.
because, like, the only real like research I did on this was the MK Ultra stuff, and a lot of the times during that, it's reported that they were picking, you know, drug addicts in sort of the lower classes. So it wasn't. I don't know if it is like a self-aggrandizing thing in terms of I'm very important, they're picking me. I think it's more along the lines of they're doing an experiment on the populace or like general people. Like, I just happen to be one of the ones they got. Like, that's the sort of more the vibe I got from it. I wasn't sure it was like, they're not like, oh, I'm being targeted because I know the secret.
Sure.
It's more, I just happen to be one of the people who got caught in the like, you know, in the crosshairs. Similar to like other conspiracy theories, like
I think
chemtrails, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that plays off the like the government toying with them, and I think a lot of explanations that they would have come from the idea that the government is some like horrible, evil association that gets off on like messing with them and making them think they're crazy. Because when it comes down to it, there's no real research that's happening in these communities. Like, these people aren't doing like electronic like courses online about like electronics and data signals or anything. It's just pure speculation. And I mean, they would get like a metal detector and do it around their body for like 2 minutes and like nothing's going off, and then they'll be like, oh, I think I heard a beep. I think there's a beep right there.
Yeah, and it shows they have some info.
Yeah.
Sorry, so should we? Oh, no, go ahead,
No, I was just gonna finish by saying, like, it is completely different from like how a regular person would try and go around this. Like, it is just very much, just strange. But go on.
So they're not actually trying to find the truth.
Yeah.
They're trying to find like any evidence to
Mm-hmm.
support their beliefs, which is the heart of all conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
So let's just jump back to the community aspect again, because I think it's so important in this one. So I'm part of this Facebook group called Targeted Individuals Public, and I'm part of a few others which you had to join. So I don't know if I mentioned this to you guys before, but a few months ago I actually reported a post on here to the police in the person's like local town. So this is. I'll just read to you the post I reported because I just found it in my screenshots, which I forwarded to like the local police of where this dude is from. He said, "I've killed 2 of my perps, and the police haven't find out who done it. One was drawn while swimming, and was doing direct conversations about something that I just said in the privacy of my own home. And there's no punctuation in this, by the way. And the other one, I came to bother me by placing his cell phone almost in front of my face. Well, I waited until he came out of work and stabbed him about 30 times. And those perps didn't know who they messed up with, and from now on, that's going to happen to any perps that try to mess with me. But right now, I'm just hoping things go cold with our local police, so that I could strike again. Or if the handler knows, he or she won't send people to mess with me, the wrong person, after these 2 killing. I didn't feel remorse because of all they did to me. Actually, felt a sense of relief. I'm afraid to do it for the 3rd because it's been 4.5 months since I took revenge. But I don't think I want to try my luck with the 3rd time."
Fucking hell.
Jesus.
So did that
And then he said,
like happen?
I have no idea.
Did you get any response from?
They didn't respond.
Oh.
They didn't
What-
respond. But they read
What
it.
was the community like? When this was posted, what was the like comments and stuff? Like, what were people saying about it?
I don't remember the comments. As far as I can see from these screenshots, there weren't any comments at that time.
Okay.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, there's posts like this all the fucking time on there. Like people just saying like incredibly disturbing things.
But I can't imagine
about-
that's real, surely, because
It-
if someone was in
Probably not.
where, like,
he was in America somewhere. He was in California.
yeah, surely that would have been reported, and maybe it's just the person's trying to say that to get them off their
Perps off their
back.
back.
So yeah,
Is
I
it-
was going to ask you, what's the deal with the perps and the handlers? Like, is
I
that
was
just
going
the
to
lingo
say
for
that,
stuff?
yeah. Like you use some. Well, he used some terminology in that people might not know. So what exactly are perps and handlers? And I think I saw gagged person as another one that some people use, and
I haven't heard gagged person.
I think it has some relation to people who have interaction with perps and are being silenced or something like that. I don't quite remember. But yeah, what are perps and what are handlers?
So a perp is one of the gang stalkers, and gang stalking is the idea that you're being stalked by like a massive amount of people that are coordinated. A perp is just one of those, and I think a handler is the person who like is the guy who organizes all the gang stalking for them and handles all the perps. It's I don't know.
The perp.
Do you think
Yeah.
within these communities, somebody would come out with a story or like a theory, and then somebody else would be like, "Actually, I think you might be mistaken on this one."
Yeah, there is debate within the community actually about like what's real and what's not. Some people, you actually see people getting called out like, you know, you're not being gang stalked, you're just mentally ill.
Really?
Hmm.
Because that's something
Yeah.
that interesting. I read that where it was like on one of the Reddit posts I saw, with one of the moderators was very clearly distinguishing between people with something like paranoid schizophrenia and people who are targeted individuals, which I find really, I don't know, I find it really interesting. I guess I just wonder what your thoughts were.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. So some of these people like they believe. So one of the arguments I've heard is that the gang stalkers do things to targeted individuals that are so similar to schizophrenia as to like discredit them. So you know you're having voices in your head, and you try and tell someone about that, and they're going to say you have a mental illness, maybe schizophrenia, and that's on purpose because no one's going to believe that you're actually being targeted.
It's like
So
discrediting.
it's literally an intentional thing. So they're making people seem like they're crazy.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like it's unprovable because you go to the doctor and you say this and they're like you have schizophrenia, and that actually just like solidifies your belief even more.
Yeah, there's so many like circular thinking, like evidence that proves itself sort of thing that you would just have no way of actually engaging with one of these people and like trying to get them out of this.
There's no way. Yeah, there's an argument for everything.
Well, yeah, because you're just a TI if you try and like you're not, sorry, a perp, right? Yeah, man, the language is so interested in all of these cases we look at. It's very they have their own terms for this and their own. It's almost like a code, isn't it? To
Yeah,
Yep.
but I mean,
find out
saying
other
that,
TIs.
I do find it kind of weird, right? Because it's like one of the most mainstream conspiracy theories, if you want to call it that, is the idea that Facebook wants to gather everyone's information. So then it seems kind of weird that all these people are openly talking about it on Facebook.
It's bizarro. They love Facebook. All these conspiracy weirdos love Facebook. Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's
okay.
like all these people who are trying to guard their privacy and like worried about people spying them, and they're just fucking giving
And they post on
everything
Facebook,
to
it's
like
I saw a guy
Facebook.
across the street and he's fucking
Yeah,
watching me or whatever.
Yeah.
I killed someone. I'm putting this on Facebook.
Yeah, I
what
know.
the
Like,
fuck?
how would you think that is private? Like, for
Maybe
fuck's
they
sake.
don't.
Yeah.
Maybe they just think like, oh well, they know everything I'm doing anyway. So
True, yeah.
Why
so
not double
not?
down it? Which then, but then if he's
For God's
lying,
sake.
why would that like? What the fuck, you know? If
Yeah.
it's true, they know, and if they're lying, they know. Because surely, if like your fucking perps just disappear and they're like some sort of weird like organization is following you and monitoring you, and the two people they send after you have suddenly disappeared, they're gonna fucking like, It's so dumb.
It could be a third
It's so
option
dumb.
that he just believes he murdered someone and that never happened.
God.
because he has a
it's
severe
got all
mental
American
illness.
Psycho on them. Like,
Well, I mean, yeah, it could be the case because these people are very, very delusional.
Yeah.
So yeah, the type of post and the interactions between them on the group is pretty interesting as well. It's a lot of like complete rambling, and then people commenting with just like complete rambling. That like I know they can't understand each other. I mean, I really don't believe they do.
but what's this?
'Cause
So yeah, sorry, I want to cut in again and just be like, is the community like a supportive community? Like, would you class it
Yeah,
like as
yeah.
in that everyone believes that they're trying to offer advice to the other target individuals, or they're just comparing sort of war stories?
So there's a bit of like comparing war stories, and there's a lot of like it'll be okay, and there's a lot of advice as well. Like you should try this new method. Like I'm just scrolling down the page now, and someone's created some sort of weird magnet thing that apparently if you put on your head, it's better.
like a tinfoil hat.
It looks like this is a really weird comparison, but you know one of the like ladders they use to help spiders get out of the bath.
What?
Like people have like a
I've
little
never
ladder.
heard
What
of
are you
that.
talking about?
Oh,
I want an image of this in the description for people who don't know what a fucking ladder is for spiders to out of the bath.
What an object to have.
Yeah.
Like, oh, what's
Do you
this in
find
your
it-
drawer?
Do you get that
Like-
from Poundland?
Or do you make it?
I
Are they
did-
homemade?
Maybe this is not something everyone else has thought about, but I'm pretty sure that is a thing. People have ladders for spiders, like that hang in their butt.
Join us
and it
next
looks like a
week
little
for
ladder.
Under the Heat Lamp Extra, where we talk about spider ladders. Another insect
spider-
helping materials.
I'll send you guys, and we'll post in the description a link to this YouTube video that I've just seen that has the spider ladder guy.
What was your point on this? Why are we talking about this?
Carry on.
So that's really it. I mean, he has made a thing that you put on your head.
That looks like a spider
to
ladder.
I have no
Looks like
idea
spider
what a
ladder.
thing, like a piece of headwear that looks like a tool to help spiders get out of the bath. It's like a net. Like what?
I've just googled spider ladder for bath, and there's lots of. Well, there's not actually that many results. I don't know why I said spider ladder because it looks exactly like a normal ladder, but just small.
And they
So
walk
someone's
on their-
wearing-
their 8 legs.
Yeah, here it is. I just posted.
It's not an
it.
actual spider
We'll
in
post
it,
it.
though.
We'll post this. In the...
So yeah, it's just a
You're
ladder.
fucking with
It's just
us.
a little ladder.
You're fucking with us.
Fuck off, is that thing?
So how does someone have a hat that looks like this?
It just like it's like a little spider ladder that wraps around your head.
Are you a TI?
Can that be the
This isn't
description?
real.
Can that be the description of the pod?
It's
It's
also a
like a little
Photoshop
spider ladder
spider.
that wraps around your head.
Okay, I mean all the
Spiders can
some
climb
of
up
them-
walls. Like they can climb.
Not
They
bath,
can't climb
not
up.
bath.
They can't climb up.
Only when
baths.
it's wet,
Famously,
right?
They always get
That's it,
trapped
if they're in the
bath.
bath, they're
Dude,
fucked.
There's
they
surely
are
just like a
fucked.
bit of
Okay,
cloth
that's,
draped over.
honestly,
the
this is kind of freaking me out because that's literally the only image I
Can this-
find
can
of
this
thing, which
picture
I
be
thought was
the-
a common thing?
Can this picture be the description? And can the description be it's like a spider ladder wrapped around your head?
Yeah, it's like so. Yeah, that's my advice to any TIs is to get a
Describe
little
this as
spider
something
ladder.
else. What else does it look like?
It's a small ladder.
It's just a little ladder,
It
yeah.
just
Like
literally
this
looks
over
like a
the,
ladder.
the like faucet.
but where the steps of the ladder are magnets.
What?
Okay.
What?
Oh, here, look, here we go.
Yeah,
I
you
found
got to
a
find the
video.
original.
Oh, fuck's sake, it's unavailable.
Stop those
can you guys
perps
see this
watching.
Can you guys see this post?
Is this all
Can I
code?
post this?
What we're doing? This is all code.
Yeah,
to
to,
other
like
parts.
Can you guys see that?
Yes, okay, it does look like a ladder, kind of.
So Do you know what I mean by looking
Oh,
like a
it
spider
does.
ladder?
Why did you say it
Is
looks
it-
like a little ladder?
Oh my god, it is.
Oh, yeah, the
Okay, we
videos
need to
are
put the.
available.
Can we put the
That's it, there you
pictures?
go.
Okay,
Well, I'll screenshot.
Yeah,
this
pictures in
and
the description.
I'll do an image, and we'll put that in the description.
because that was a
okay?
weirdly accurate description.
I think description.
So what do they
Yeah,
do?
exactly.
Wrap it around his head?
I don't know. I'm just assuming that.
Do you hang it off your
from-
neck? Like this or something?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it could be, but they like wrapping stuff around their head, so I just.
How
made
do
that
magnets
assumption.
work?
Anyway,
Anyway, yeah,
we've
back
got-
on track.
We've got off track on this spider ladder business.
All right.
I'm really mind blown. That's not a thing.
How about this? Do you think it would be beneficial for like the health of these TIs just to break up all of the online communities? Like, what do you think they'll do?
That's a really good question.
I think they would see that as an attack against them if you were to do that.
Think they'll just go into like more underground communities?
Yeah, I think they'd see it as like they're trying to shut us down. They're trying to shut down the networks. Not like we're trying to help them.
But would it help with the spread of this?
Yeah, I think like social media sites need to step in more with this kind of thing, or at least I don't know. It's like you said, Don. I think you're right. Of shutting them down now would like only like fan the flames, but in the starting up, maybe like restrict this sort of thing. Maybe if people are looking at those sites or members of those sites, maybe pointing them in the direction of maybe help. Like, targeted ads are like legitimate. Like, no one believes that they're not a thing. Maybe like target some mental health like things towards them. I don't know. Like I was reading one thing where the journalist was doing an article about their father who believed they were a targeted individual, and when she started to research it, she started to get adverts that were pointing her in the direction of psychological help. So maybe like more of that kind of thing and education. But I don't really know. Once you get to a point where you think that the mailman is keeping track on you, I don't really know where you go from there.
Yeah, I think with some people, it is just so far that you would need like a lot of specialized professional help to really break away the conspiracy. But there would definitely be, like, especially on Facebook, there'd be a lot of people who would fall through the cracks and not join these like new communities that would pop up, and that like there are people who might not be like super radicalized, and then I think for them it would be like a big benefit. Because these places are just like breeding grounds. People would go in if they've got like a bit of paranoia, or they think that like something small might be happening to them, and then they'll get convinced that they're part of this massive government conspiracy and they can't trust anyone.
Yep. I think it definitely it can start people's paranoid delusions, and it can fuel them and take them in a very specific direction. Which I think is quite dangerous. And I know there's a big debate at the moment going on about whether social media has a responsibility to remove fake news because of its destructive influence. And I think this would be another one where they should definitely think carefully about whether they want communities that literally fuel mental illness to continue existing on their website.
Yeah, for sure.
But I don't know.
Sure. Like, it's anything like that where it's like you see a lot with eating disorders and anorexia, and a lot of people who have sort of suicidal thoughts. That stuff can get glamorized and really really fuels it. And someone has to do something, right? They can't be left unchecked to just. These aren't support groups. These are quite dangerous things for the individuals who find themselves trapped in that metaphorical bath,
And, and they need that spider ladder.
Yeah.
to get
You
out.
need that
That
helping
spider.
hand of the spider ladder.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. I mean, does anyone else have any more thoughts on kind of the community aspects of the cult?
I mean, yeah, I don't know if it is a community. I know there is a community around it, but I don't think it's it's not like
a community.
Yeah, I guess so. It's a weird one. It doesn't sit well for me. I don't know how to
I don't think
Yeah.
you would come up with all of these nuanced ideas around this if there wasn't the community.
Yeah, I think it definitely is for sure. Because
No, I guess you're right. Yeah.
Say when like social media became a bigger thing, I can imagine there was a lot of instances where just like, oh wow, look at all these people, they think the same thing as I do, and then it just kind of spawns off that, like any other thing, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's just a weird one. It's so like things like the other conspiracy theories like the flat Earth we mentioned, but it's so individual, like you guys said, that it's a weird one. It's a community, but it's a community of individuals, if that makes sense. It's not a community where everyone's joined together, interacting in a way. They're very much just people who are. It's almost like an AA type thing. I get that vibe. It's a lot of people who would like describe themselves as survivors who are, swapping story. Yeah, exactly. It's not like they're discussing how to, further the flat Earth cause and get the message out there. It's
It's literally just like we are. It's so true. It's people just like venting about their victimhood, and about their persecution, which is completely different from your average conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
And I wonder how the general conspiracy theory community takes this. Like, what do the 9/11 truthers think about targeted individuals? They probably just think they're mental.
Yeah, like I reckon you're right on that one.
Where is being a TI on the ladder of where would you rank it out of 10 for like how far it is down?
Down the plug hole.
It's got to be the peak.
I think it's
gotta
up there.
be the
Yeah.
peak.
I think it's the current top spot. I think more like not out of 10 like tiers. This is the S tier at the moment.
Yeah, this is S tier conspiracy because it's so all consuming. You can't walk away from it. You can get home at night and watch your fucking really weird, boring YouTube lectures about aliens, and then switch it off when you go to work or whatever. But these people, it's day.
Yeah, there's
day
no
out.
limit to the scope of this sort of belief in terms of you could be watching TV and thinking that the person is sending
Talking
a
to
message
you.
to you, like
Yeah.
everything
Yeah.
potentially has a meaning that can affect you, and it's weird. It's like a lot of the stuff we talked about in the sort of practice ones, but on the one hand, it is really funny if someone believes the bus driver is, checking them out. But it is also really scary that they think that they live in a fake world, essentially. Like,
It must be terrifying. You literally think you're on the Truman Show.
yeah, right?
Like a helicopter goes past, that's for you. Police car goes past, that's for you. Like everything around the world is. Imagine believing it's all just centered around you. Be horrible.
Yeah.
Absolutely horrible. And this is what these people go through. So
All right. Well,
I wish them all the best.
I think that's a good place to end.
Yeah. How do you want to wrap this one up, Kaelan?
Oh,
So
Are
I'm
we
going to wrap this
gonna-
one up by plugging our social media, which is brand new. You can follow us on Twitter at Heatlamp Podcast, and you can email us at heatlamppodcast@gmail.com.
yeah. Let us know if you know
If
what
you-
spider ladders are. Have you heard of them?
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you know what spider ladders are, please get into contact. Because I feel like I'm at the center of the conspiracy right now. Because I was so sure this was a thing.
Any homemade spider
email us
ladders out there? You want to share your pics?
Send your pics to your spider ladders. We are giving you permission to send them. If you got any ideas for episodes or anything you'd like us to talk about, or any thoughts on targeted individuals or on what we did last week, then please email us. But yeah, that's it from us. Bye, everybody.
Sweet. See
Bye.
ya.
I would just like to add before we go, please don't invent spider ladders. Leave them in the bath.
Oh wait, no, we hold the patent on spider ladders.
Yeah,
Merchandise
link
coming
in.
soon.
Yeah. Under the Heatlamp brand, spider ladders coming up.
That's the
on,
first bit of
Under the
merch.
Heatlamp podcast.
They also double up as
.org.
anti, electronic beams
Anti
into your veins.
B2K.
Stay
Save your
stay
brain.
safe out
and the
there.
spiders.
Bye.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Farewell.